and welcome back to the AI Marketer's Playbook, where we cover actionable frameworks to help you leverage AI in business. I am Audrey Chia, your host, and today I have with me Tim Hanson, the founder of Penfriend, a cutting-edge AI-powered SEO content solution. Now, Tim has over a decade of experience in SEO and in the agency world, working with over 30 clients as the head of SEO. Today, he runs one of the best SEO AI platforms in the market and is also a well sought after prompt engineering expert. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Hey, thanks very much for having me on. I really appreciate the invite.
Awesome. So I would love to know a bit more about your background and how did you even get started? Because I came from a copywriting background and I had to figure out the whole world of AI as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you must have done the thing where as marketers, we all get that email that tells us whether or not we still have a job and how difficult it's going to be. You must have got the one that we get in like January that tells you whether, like, how difficult it's going to be. So then got the email telling me that the robots are taking my job last year. And I think the thing for me, like working in SEO, is that's not scary because I get that 3 times a year. It's called a Google update. And I have to relearn my entire job again. So this one coming along of like, oh no, the robots are going to take my job is a little bit scarier than the majority of those like updates that we get, but it was enough that I took it as a challenge more than anything, was to really realize a lot of people are going to be very scared by this.
Yeah.
And when there's fear in the marketplace, there's opportunities.
It is true.
Yeah.
Fun fact, right? So my client was the one who sent me the link of ChatGPT and he sent me the email and he said to me, Audrey, you are going to be replaced. That was actually my pivot. Yes, it really
you have
happened.
a client telling you that. It's ridiculous.
That was my pivotal moment. I think he meant it as a joke, but sort of meant it. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. And how did you actually started picking up the skill sets for prompting?
So I was sort of playing around with ChatGPT, I want to say in like August, September time of 2022. It was just one of those things that I was kind of seeing and I was playing around with it a little bit in regards to like how I actually fully like, okay, cool, this is the thing. I need to pick this skill up. I need to learn as much as I possibly can. Was grabbing as many people's courses as I could, just absorbing as much of that knowledge as I could, like quickly as possible. And just writing an enormous amount of prompts.
Yeah.
Constantly writing. And the thing that I had more than anyone else, I think, was everyone was trying to write prompts for single use. I need to write this one page, blah, 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 like all this kind of stuff. In SEO and content creation, we have so many processes that you do over and over and over again. The thing that was most important to me was, how do I write a prompt that gives me the same output every time?
Yep.
How do I be that specific with a prompt? And the thing that I realized pretty early on was, do you remember everyone was like, oh my God, prompts don't work. Like it doesn't do its job. It's actually really bad at doing this thing. And I'm over here and I'm like, it's actually pretty good at doing the thing. But you're not asking it. You're asking it one thing and you're expecting something else and never telling it the bridge in between, which is massively unfair. Like, if you have a friend that you have a set of expectations for and you never tell them the expectations and you get mad at that friend, that's just not fair, right? So the thing that I realized pretty quickly was most people's prompts were just not in depth enough. They weren't covering specifics well enough, and that comes from, you write a prompt, you get an answer, and then you go, oh, that is a bad answer, I'm just going to rewrite the prompt. The problem is not ChatGPT. The problem is you. The problem is your prompt.
She put it on a shirt.
Your prompt is bad.
The problem is you, not ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely see that as well. Like even because I'm a conversion copywriter, right? So I have seen people try to get AI to create a landing page, but what they are not doing is they are not leading AI and guiding AI to get to that dream outcome. So
Yeah.
that is what I have seen, a difference between like a good prompt versus something that is like do it for me instead of like
Yeah.
okay, let me help you to get there. Is that something
Yeah.
you've also experienced?
Yeah, so we did a really interesting thing with Penfriend when we were first writing when I was first putting all of the prompts together for the first version of Penfriend. And this is like a year ago at this point. Like, this isn't even the one that we originally launched with. But Inga and I sat down and worked out how many decisions as a human do you need to make to go from no content existing to published blog. And we worked out that there was at least 27 separate decisions that a human needs to make between those 2 points. And for each one of those decisions, you're essentially wearing a different hat. You have a different set of criteria that you need to take into account for. You have a different output that you want. You have different information that you're pulling in, let alone a different persona that you need to embody to make the right decisions. And we looked at that and went, okay, cool, that's 25 separate prompts. Because I have to tell it a different thing and for it to take into account different ideas. And yet you have people on LinkedIn that are like, I can write a really good blog in one prompt. And it's like, no, you can't. We've just proven that I need 25 prompts to write a good blog, and you're like, oh, you can do it in one. It's like, you can't. It's not good.
Yeah.
It looks okay, maybe, but if you actually have trained writers, you have people that care about it, you've cherry-picked a good output. You don't have something that's repeatable every single time. But then the difference there is I can write one prompt, and then the other one is I have 25 prompts to write.
Yeah, it's true. And I don't think people actually see how much thought goes behind getting good quality copy with AI. So I've noticed that there are two camps, right? One camp is AI can't write. And then the other camp is AI writes everything but there's no human in between. And then there are people sort of like us who are basically seeing that there's how do we get it to sound more human, but also realizing that it's not as straightforward as what most people think, and that there are actually multiple steps to get to the end result.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really made the biggest difference to me in terms of how do I get good quality output from prompting is the things that I'm trying to get it to prompt are jobs that I have manually done myself several hundred times, if not a couple thousand times, depending on what the specific job is. So I am already approaching the prompt with an SOP, a standard operating procedure, literally a checklist of how I do that job in mind before I write the prompt. So I have all of the rules and how I get a good output. All I'm doing is just transferring that into a prompt with a good persona, an expected output, a format of output, those kind of things on the other side. And if I don't give it all of those things, one, I'm not going to get a good output, but two, if I've not already done that process several hundred times, how do I know what a good output even looks like?
Yes. And the beautiful part that I always say is, even though writers of, content writers, conversion copywriters, brand copywriters, they may be afraid of AI, but the thing is, actually writers are the best people to prompt for good copy, because you already know what good copy and good content looks like, and you understand your own internal processes to get there. But I'm also curious to ask, right, for someone who is new to SEO, what kinds of steps do you actually take into consideration? Because for me, I'm not a SEO writer, so I have actually no idea what you need to consider during this process.
So let's dig a little bit more specifically from an SEO point of view as to what's the job that we're trying to get. Is it more so how do we get the content to rank, or how do we get people to click from the search results? Because from my side, they're two different things.
So if it was a new business owner trying to work on SEO, what would their priority be and what would you get them to focus on?
Okay, cool. So the first thing that I would ask them to do is give me, like, what is one topic that they get asked about a lot and that they can answer without really thinking about it, because they're just an expert. They just know this thing really well. So let's, for example, take, I don't know why, but for whatever reason I've got in my head is like pool cleaning.
Okay.
You could take something like pool cleaning, and something that they probably get asked about a lot is like, how do I look after it after it's been done? How do I, like, what's the upkeep of that look like? They probably know that really well. They know the products to buy. They know if you need one of those cool little like underwater Roombas that can clean your pool. Like if you need any covering, if there's any specific plants that ruin the filtration system. Like they have a level of expertise that they know really well. But it's not as top of funnel as just like clean my pool. How do I clean my pool? So it's further down. Like it's a little bit more grounded in something that is more specific to them as an expert. And then what I would do is take that from them. Personally, what I would do is have some kind of interview with them, do it through Zoom, take the transcript, and then get it to pull out all of the insights into specifics that I would then put into some kind of prompt that gives me like 10 blogs that I should write on that thing. And I personally, because I own the tool, would put them all through Penfriend and then get all of those blogs out and put them on someone's site. 10's probably not going to be enough. You probably want 15 to 20 or so. So I would look to see if there's any places where there are subtopics, bits where we can go a little bit deeper. I would then look to try and put as many of those insights that I've gotten from that interview, from that person, into the content, so it pushes the human first element of it. But the thing that I'm looking to do more than anything is establish what we would call topical authority, which is I have 30 blogs on topic A and topic A alone, therefore I'm an expert in that space. Only an expert could talk about that topic for 30 blogs.
Yeah.
Right? And the problem that I see that most companies have, especially early on, is they treat their content strategy as a magazine. So like a magazine will have like a summer issue and an autumn issue, and all of these, like every issue is different. There's a different focus. That is a big problem when you're writing SEO articles, when you're writing like content to rank, because let's, for example, say the arbitrary number is you need 10 articles to rank for topic A. Now, if you've got 4 or 5 topics, let's call it 4 for sake of argument, and you rotate between each one of those every week, so you're publishing 4 blogs a month, one every week, topic A, B, C, D. Let's say you need 10 for you to start ranking, for Google to start paying attention to you. You're going to be at month 10 before Google picks anything up. Or you could be halfway through month 3 if you do topic A, topic A, topic A, topic A, and just do that for 10 articles and get them all done. And the nice thing about that, and this is the thing that I've found so many times, is you have content that supports each other.
Yeah.
That is in a position where you can very easily direct somebody from one blog to another, and they can, if it grabs them and they want more information, you can send them to another article that you have. The hardest thing in the world is to get somebody to land on your blog. The last thing you want to do is introduce them to a topic, an idea, a concept that you then don't also answer, and they go back to Google and they go to someone else's blog. You've lost them. They've gone. A great example that I had of this was, I remember seeing a video where somebody had a pair of rollerblades with 3 wheels instead of 4. I skated a ton as a kid. Like, I've never seen a pair of rollerblades with 3 wheels. So I'm doing a search like 3-wheeled versus 4-wheeled roller skates, and there's this big blog that's like telling me what all of the benefits are, like they're better over bumps, they're a lot more cruisier, and I'm like,
Wow.
that's the kind of thing I want now. And then they didn't give me a link to the shop for me to go and buy them.
They just lost a customer.
So I went back to Google and bought them from a different website.
Yeah, yeah, and that's definitely also the importance of having a clear call to action, like what I always
Yeah.
tell my clients
Yeah.
on any kind of landing page or even a blog page, right? But I also want to
Exactly.
find out, right, because we've been talking about AI so much, but question, how much of the human element is important when it comes to AI generated SEO articles?
So the way that we do things with Penfriend is you can publish articles directly from Penfriend, and they do well, like they do really well. But the thing that I've found when it comes from like a conversion point of view is you need to go and add the human element to it. Because if you don't add the human element to it, what's stopping literally anybody else from buying the same tool as you and putting in the same keyword and effectively getting the same article out from the other side? There's no differentiation. You're essentially just creating immediate competition for yourself. That human element is the thing that gets people to buy. It's the thing that gets people to resonate with the content a lot more. But mostly it's the thing that gives you unique insights and unique stats and figures and connection from one person to another that nobody else has, and is the thing that Google is rewarding really well in the search results, like at the minute. So if you don't add them in and you're stuck on page 2, that's probably why you're stuck on page 2.
Interesting. And from an SEO perspective, right, what would you consider, a human element in a blog? Because let's say for a landing page, right, that human element could be the founder's story, because that's really unique to them. What happens for a long form article?
Ryan Law put this really, really well, which was AI will write you should. Humans will write I could. No, sorry, humans will write I would. People who know what they're talking about will write I could do this. So I should is like just generic, goalless, I don't really care about your outcome, like advice. I would is, if I have this problem now, this is what I would do to solve it. And now you're showcasing like your own personal expertise, the things of like how you would do it again. I could actually is now showcasing a comparison of different ideas. I could do this if this was the situation. I could also do this if the situation was different. And the point there that is really only experts and people who know what they're doing would have different outputs depending on what the input is. So if you're writing like a how-to, if you're writing something that is like, I'm going to show you how to solve this specific problem,
Yeah.
and you can take into account, this is where it's gone wrong for me before. This is how different people have come to me with this problem, and this is how I would solve it. You could do this, you could do this, you could do this. You're gonna have much more nuanced and human forward content that is human to human, because you're taking into account their different situations versus just, you should go and do this. This is how you solve X problem, and it sits in a box and it's in a vacuum, and nothing else will ever impact that problem that you're trying to solve.
Interesting. And here's a question, right? Would we be able to prompt for that writing style? Because technically you could provide a couple of different options by prompting for it. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think you could. I think there is a
You
point
could,
where
right?
you could prompt for it. Yeah, I'm doing the thing. I think you could. I think the problem that you would have is that is a prompt that, at least initially, is somewhat single use, right? Because I'm trying to solve problem A under circumstances ABC, right?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. You would have to put in what is the problem that you're trying to solve and what are the circumstances for each one of those. And at that point, it's like, just write the thing by yourself, because this really isn't a prompt that I feel like you could use multiple times. So at least for me, I wouldn't want to write that prompt because it's not actually saving any time for me. If, on the other hand, you had author bio and expertise and some way that you could work out what are the different situations that somebody might be trying to solve that problem in and how they are different, and you could put those things in with some kind of like vector storage, some kind of like on the fly prompt building, then yes, I think you could. But then I'm looking at it from a point of view which is, how do I make it a repeatable prompt?
Yes.
Not how do I just do this once?
Yes. And
Yeah.
that repeatability is very important when it comes to building a
Yeah.
system that works, right? And speaking of
Yeah.
prompts, right, I think it would be amazing if you could share maybe a couple of prompts with us, or the way you would structure certain prompts, so that
Yeah.
our audience also can learn a little something from your amazing brain.
Yeah, totally down to do this. Let me just pull up. So I've done a couple workshops on how I build prompts before. So I'm just going to walk through like exactly how I build like massive prompts and then go through the like iteration process of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So for those of you who cannot see what's on screen, Tim can walk us through, and then you can just talk through the different prompts and how you actually think about it. Because I think a lot of people see prompts out there, but they don't understand the thought process behind crafting the prompt. And maybe you can share a little bit of like perspective on how you build prompts and what is your thought process when you're doing so.
Yeah, totally. More than happy to. Okay, cool. So I came across this like whole term of mega prompt. Feels like it must have been like over a year and a half ago at this point, of people writing these ridiculously long prompts and not really explaining kind of how they do it and why they do it in the way that they do it. So I tried as much as I could to break it apart into something that was replicatable. And if it wasn't 100% replicatable, I could at least understand which part of the prompt wasn't doing its job, because each part of the prompt kind of has a very specific thing that it's supposed to do. So you'll have seen kind of everywhere, maybe it's really big, everybody always says like you have to give it, like, who is it pretending to be? At the time when I was writing this, the way that I would write this would have been like, you are a AI persona, blah, blah, blah. The way that I do this now is this bit here would be more along the lines of something like this, where it's adopt the role of A. And if you've got a couple of roles that you feel like you want that overlapping point of a Venn diagram, then it's you just change that to roles, and then you give like whatever the role 2 would be. So in this instance, instead of it being like bottom of funnel software like list pages, it could be bottom of funnel software list pages and the role of a like product specialist or something along those lines.
So you're combining 2 different roles and giving it like this kind of additional knowledge from both roles, right?
Yeah. So, and then the rest of this is just, what do I expect it to do? What kind of, give it an outline of what that person's job is. This can be super in depth, or you can literally just keep it to this first sentence of, these are the roles that I want you to embody. Really depends on how specific and how repeatable you need a prompt to be. But this is the bit that I found, once you've got everything else good, in a really good position that you like, playing around with the persona is usually the bit that helps you to take an output that you have and see how it might differ from a different point of view.
Interesting. So your persona is basically the lever that you move in order to change the output to a bigger extent?
Yeah, it's like, imagine it like this. I have a problem, I have a task I'm trying to solve. The persona is the angle and the lens that I'm using to look at that problem. So I might want to do this in regards to like how different would it be if I changed this to top of funnel? How different would it be if instead of it being software list pages, it was camping gear pages? And I don't know, like it's I found that this is the bit that you can do the smallest changes and have the biggest output like difference, because it's as if it's a completely different person performing the same task.
Got it. And I wanted to ask also, like, based on your experience prompting, right, do you feel like a longer persona with more extensive details work better than a shorter one?
That's a good question. So sometimes some of the personas that we've got for some of the Penfriend prompts are so specific, it's like that's nobody's human job ever. And it's just me trying to get like as tight as I possibly can onto a very specific, very, very specific repeatable output. Some of them are pretty loose, in all fairness. The thing that I've found is if you want a crazy repeatable output, have a more specific persona, but you are doing it at the expense of how much of that output is that you can get out of it. So if you've got a really specific persona, you will get a repeatable output, but you might only get a couple of sentences that are exactly perfect that you want every time. If you have less of a persona, you're kind of giving up the exact amount that is repeatable for a bigger output on the other side. So that's one of the reasons why with Penfriend, when we write blog articles, we do it heading by heading. We don't write the entire blog in one go. We write from an H2 to an H2 as one single prompt. And then each H2 is effectively then pulled through its own specific series of prompts for it to write the output, because I needed it to be loose enough to write good copy, but tight enough for it to be stuff that we can then sell and is a good output on the other side. Yeah,
definitely. It's always like that balance, right? And there are so many different ways to prompt, but even for myself, when I prompt, sometimes I intentionally break it down into super small steps so that I can get really high quality output. Whereas when you combine everything into one prompt and then you realize that the output is totally different from what you expected. So
yeah, true. So then
awesome.
After we've done a persona, I then give it just a top level view of what the task is. Like, what are we just trying to achieve? And then from there, steps of what the task is. Now this, you can literally break this down into like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. For this, it's kind of a combination of what's going on in the persona and the steps here. So it works pretty well for this prompt specifically. And then constraints. So I think the thing that a lot of people do is they get mad because, oh, it went off the rails and it did this and it did this and it did this. And it's like, you never told it not to.
yeah,
You never said, don't do this, don't use these words, like, keep within this box. So I like to have some level of constraints, context kind of going on. And then the goal. So the goal isn't something I think you have to put in every time. But I find that it's nice to give it a goal, because this is kind of bringing it back to the persona. Like, what is this person that you've invented here? What is their purpose?
yeah,
Really? Like, how do you give them a purpose? What is the thing that they're actually trying to achieve? And I found that like having some level of a goal, their purpose, gets you a lot closer to what is me as the person writing the prompt, what is my expectation on the other side? Because if I don't tell it what my expectation is and you write something, now we're misaligned and I'm going to be mad, but that's unfair because I never told you what my goal was. So telling it what the goal is usually a good thing to do. And then formatting, like how do you want it to deliver you all of that information?
I think what most people forget is also the formatting part. Like, when I ask for ad copy, for example, the formatting makes a huge difference. For example, if I ask for a certain output with specific character constraints, then when I get the copy for my ads, it's a lot tighter. Whereas if you don't do that, often what ChatGPT does, it gives you a paragraph of content for ad copy which you cannot use. So that's also something I've noticed.
Yeah, the formatting is the bit that I think is also a lot of fun to play around with, because sometimes you see what you get out of ChatGPT, Anthropic, whatever you're using, and you're like, oh, it would be better if it looked like this. But you don't know that until you kind of see how it presented it in the first place. And that's always just a nice thing for you to then like maybe copy and paste your entire prompt and have a play around with this and see what your output's going to look like in a different thread. Play around with those things. The thing that I always kind of want it to do on the other side is like once I've done this kind of step, once it's gone live, like I've put it all through, is I will always tweak. And I will always tweak as to kind of what I want from the other side of it. It's never going to do what you want straight away.
Yeah.
But then I found that these kind of prompts are the kind of prompts that you want for when you know you've got a very specific task for it to do. The other way that I love doing prompts is to get your LLM to almost play the role of a consultant. This works really well when you know what you want. Sometimes you have no idea what you want and you need it to ask you a load of questions. So one of the things that where are we? One of these. Okay, cool. This one. So one of the things that I love doing with a lot of prompts is, again, persona. This is kind of what I have. I've given it like, I need some kind of output that I'm specifically looking for. But what I'm telling it is, you're going to ask me a lot of questions because I don't really know what to do yet.
Yeah.
I just know what I know what I want. I kind of think I know where I am at the minute. I have no idea what that bridge in between looks like. But I also know that there's probably a load of data, a load of points that I'm holding on to that I've not told you, that if, again, it's back to that whole, like, if I ask you to give me an output now, you're not going to give me a good output because I have a load of expectations I've not told you yet. So the thing that I love to do is, you're going to ask me a load of questions. This is where I am at the minute. After every question that you ask me, you're going to give me a score out of 100 as to how close you are to giving me a good answer. Only when you're above 90 can you start trying to give me an answer.
That is a very interesting prompt.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, cool. Let's ask you a load of questions. What are your goals? What do your data points exactly mean? Like, this is where I am at the beginning. And the funny thing here is, like, it's asking me goals, which is literally one of the things that I have in this one, because I know what the goal of this prompt is specifically, like the where I'm trying to work out, like, this is what my output is. It's literally just like, what do you want to do? What specifically are you trying to do? So it can sort of formulate all of those different bits. So it asks me the questions. I give it some base, like, rough answer. These are all perfectly fine. It's like, cool. Here's some more stuff we're going to go through. This is me trying to prioritize a load of keywords, but it's more the idea of, like, I'm now working with it. And it's giving me, this is how I'm thinking about these things. This is where we are at the moment. Am I going on in the right direction? So the really interesting thing here that it's done is it's added this relevance score that I've told it I don't have the data for. Like, this isn't something that I have. So I'm telling it here, like, I don't have a relevance score. How do we figure that out? Is that something you want me to figure out? Or is this something that, like, can we move on without this score? So it's like, okay, cool. This is how I would try and work out what a relevance score might look like. We could potentially use CPC data. We could use a proximity to a core keyword. We could do some level of manual sampling. I think if I remember correctly, I'm like, I'm not going to do any of these things. Can we just not do it? But it's like, okay, cool. Here's 75 out of 100. But what I've noticed is it's not asked me any more questions. So I'm telling it, like, ask me more questions. Give me more questions. So then we go through, eventually we get to a point where it gives me this nice like formula. I tell it what I have as a spreadsheet, and then it's like, cool, here's that entire formula as a spreadsheet, go test it. Like
Wow.
as a like for like Google Sheets, go and test it. And then there's just a load more like back and forth. This entire thing goes on for quite a while, but it's like, cool. I knew what my output was at the beginning. I knew what I wanted. I didn't know how to get there. I had no idea what the bridge looked like. I just know I've got this data and I want to get to somewhere. The problem that people will have is they have all of these unexpressed biases and expectations, and they never express them, and never give ChatGPT or whatever LLM you're using an opportunity to work those things out to help you solve the problem. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things when it comes to like, you want to just be good at prompting, give it everything you know. And if you don't know you know it, give it the opportunity to ask you a question for you to give it. Yeah.
Wow, I don't think I have seen anyone prompt in this manner where you are working with it and asking it to guide you to
Yeah.
get to that final outcome, which is amazing because that is something that I personally have not tested. So far, what I've always done is give it my mental model and my mental framework, but it's definitely something I would love to try to see if we can
Yeah.
like work together to get to the end goal, especially if we don't know how to get there. This seems to be a great solution.
Yeah, it's something that I've used a lot, especially when I've got in content marketing, in SEO, you have a lot of data. There's a lot of places you can pull a ridiculous amount of data from, and it can be really hard to know what is worth my time, what isn't worth my time, how can I use it best for my specific situation. And a lot of the time when you look online, people have solutions to problems that feel like they answer your problem. This is how you prioritize a load of keywords. But in reality, it doesn't take into account what are your goals. Are your goals to prioritize the keywords that have got the highest sale value? Are the goals to Is the goal to get as much traffic as possible? Is the goal to try and rank quickly for keywords that are really easy for you to rank for and don't have a lot of competition? Like, they're all very different goals, but the problem that you have can be labeled the same as I'm trying to prioritize keyword research.
Yeah.
So, but you can't talk to a blog and say, actually, my goal is different. Give me a different formula.
Yeah.
You can here. And if you wanted to, with all of these, you can plug in all of those blogs. You could go and find blogs about keyword research and prioritization and plug them all in and go, this is how people have done it before. Use these mental models. This is my situation, adapt it. Ask me whatever questions you need to know so that you understand my situation as best as possible. But when it comes to answering the problem, use these proven methods. What questions do you have? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so cool because you're actually tapping onto the power of AI for higher level strategic thinking and instead of just pure execution, which is the beauty of it. And there's so much to unlock. And I'm so curious to know because as a copywriter, I've tested different LLMs for conversion copywriting. So I know that different LLMs are great for different use cases. What is your current favorite for long form SEO content?
Good question. So we have all of the writing on Penfriend is done with Claude, is done with Opus, but the logic on how we provide it with the right data is done through GPT. And then we do a thing where each section, we then pull it all out and run it through Perplexity to fact check and cite all of the different information that kind of comes from it. So it's really difficult to give you just a straight answer as to like what is the best for long form creation. If it's just the writing, Claude. I think Opus does an insanely good job at their writing. You still have to prompt it well, but I don't think you need to be as tight for some of your prompts, and it can write just more, it's a lot more fluidity
Yes.
to it, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
That has been what I observed as well. Interestingly for me, I also use all three tools for a copywriting flow. So if I'm
Nice.
looking to write a high conversion landing page, right? Perplexity for, your numbers, your data, your analysis.
Mhm.
ChatGPT for strategic positioning. It's really good at strategy. It's still the best so far. And then Claude for the final copy and content. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to see that we are both using the same kind of pool of tools for different types of writing. And maybe
Yeah.
one last question I would love to ask you is, do you have any advice for someone who is in your field trying to use AI but still trying to navigate through this insane world?
Understand the job that you're trying to solve for first, the problem. And the thing that I found super helpful was get on Loom or Zoom or whatever and record yourself doing that job and say out loud how you do that job. Take the transcript, put it into ChatGPT, and tell it, give me a checklist on how I'm solving this problem. One, nice thing, now you have an SOP. That's always a good thing to have. Two, now you know all of the individual things that you can look to try and automate or do better. But the point that I'm making here is you're not hiding anything. I genuinely don't feel like I can iterate this enough. The reason why you write bad prompts is because you're not giving it all of the information. So if you can get all of that information as a good checklist of the job that you're trying to replicate as a prompt, then now you have a really good starting point, and you know that the job isn't the problem. Now you just need to refine your prompt. So work on the input that you're giving it
I
first.
absolutely loved it. Yeah, I think for me also, it's one last tip on my end is you have to understand your own workflows. Like, this is the one thing that has really helped me figure out prompting, by me understanding how I come up with a high conversion ad copy. And it actually is, for example, a 5 to 6 step process. And then when you break it down into these tiny parts, you can start prompting for it and get to really high quality output. And with that, thank you so much for your time, Tim, and thank you for joining us. It has been
so much for
such
having me
a
on.
pleasure having you on board. And thank you guys for tuning in. So don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and hit the bell for more actionable AI marketing insights. We'll see you next time.